compelling situation going on at Ole Miss, a team that is coming off a spot in the college football playoff, now dealing with some off-field drama, and it all has to do with NIL contracts that were leaked. What has caused a now domino effect as far as players entering the transfer portal. And there you see linebacker T.J. Dottery entered the transfer portal, one of many that will likely be affected by this story. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, I think when this story first came out, when we found out that the NIL deals have been leaked for Ole Miss, I think a lot of people around college football did a big, oh boy, because this could have some looming ramifications, and this is the first time we have heard of it. Now, there might have been some stuff internally, but we have not heard about this externally and what it has meant for other players down the road entering the transfer portal.
No, and first of all, happy Friday, everybody.
Yep.
You know, you made it through the week, so there is that. We're not going to start off this show too gloomy because it is a nice day.
Yeah.
Weather's a little bit nice outside down here in Mobile, so there is that. But no, you and I talked about this off the air yesterday after the show, and you brought up this whole situation, or I think I brought up this whole situation, and you said one of your biggest concerns in the beginning of NIL was what's going to happen when it gets leaked that your teammate is making more than you.
Right.
Are you going to be mad about it? Are you going to enter the transfer portal and try to fight with these schools about getting more money? And I think this is the first big incident we've seen ever since.
Yes.
Obviously, T.J. Dottery wore the green dot for Ole Miss last year and entered the transfer portal. I believe LSU is heavily linked to him, which should be to the surprise of absolutely nobody.
Right.
Because, I mean, Lane Kiffin kind of recruited all of these guys to go to Ole Miss. And so it's so interesting. And, you know, I just don't know if this is going to be the last time that we see this.
No, it can't. I don't think it will be either. And I think another question you have to start asking yourself is just how much the NIL deals have affected locker rooms, and it's been relatively quiet. I think entering this whole the whole NIL world and then domino effect to the transfer portal world, I think there was a lot made of, okay, well, this can cause some strife in locker rooms,
right.
And for the most part, it really hasn't on its surface. Now, when you hear 4,500 players go into the transfer portal, this might be the first one, but how many of those might be a situation where they found out their team is making more? This might just be the only public thing, but this could be probably the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, of what is going on in these locker rooms now. And I think a lot of players understand that, hey, you know, I'm not mad at anybody. They're not mad at anybody for taking money. It's just, how can it benefit me? And or I give more production, and so I should be paid more. Or even using the transfer portal, and we've seen this a lot too, using the transfer portal as a renegotiating tool in and of itself.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's kind of like free agents. I mean, the transfer portal literally is free agency for college football. And we see in professional sports all the time players that go ahead and test free agency, want to, you know, test the market, see what they're worth, and sometimes they do end up coming back. Most notably, Pete Alonso last year. Before this year, he signed with Baltimore. Last year, he tested the free agency waters. Didn't really get what he was looking for. Ended up coming back to the Mets on a 2-year deal where they opt out after year one. Obviously opted out. So I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility for some of these players to retract their name from the transfer portal. But Ben Garrett of On3 with the Ole Miss, I believe it's the Ole Miss sector of On3. He's been on this, and the report that came out was that Lane Kiffin is starting to weaponize this. So the report says that Lane Kiffin exposed some of these contracts through the agents to try and get these players into the transfer portal. Now, what I read also was that this isn't the first time that Lane Kiffin has tried to use this tactic against the team. And honestly, if this is actually what's going on right now, that it's pretty sad, because what I could see happening is, you know, he's trying to get one player, because it's no surprise that these players are represented by a lot of the same agents. Like these agencies usually represent 4, 5, 6, sometimes the bigger ones like 20 players. So, you know, he probably heard some of the rummagings around some of these players, and he knew what some of the players were making before, because he was at Ole Miss this year, and he was right in the thick of, trying to come up with these contracts after last year's.
Right.
I almost called it free agency. And I might as well call it. I might as well call it free agency.
Yes, we've kind of danced around this language for a long time. When we were talking about schools signing with guys, coming to terms with players, free agency, I think, is the right term for this.
And look, I'm going to make a comparison that honestly might sound a little crazy, but it isn't. This is like the Cold War of college football.
Interesting, yeah.
Because LSU has the #1 transfer portal class right now. Last time I checked, Ole Miss has the #3. I believe yesterday, just as recent as yesterday, they had the #2 class. I'd have to go back and look and see who jumped them. But this is kind of like USA and the Soviet Union, just going back and forth with these like puppet things. And then this is like a little puppet war for Kiffin to use against these Ole Miss guys to try and get them to come down to LSU. But I mean, this is just it's crazy that this is going on in college athletics.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question. I'll answer it first before I ask, because I think it'll be fair. The talk out there, and if you're just connecting dots with Lane Kiffin, some of the chatter is that Lane Kiffin did this on purpose to destroy the locker room.
Yeah.
And if you're just looking at reading the tea leaves overall, like, hey, look, all the talk a couple of weeks ago when Ole Miss made their run to the semifinal was, who needs Lane Kiffin?
Yeah.
All the guys are staying. If Trinidad gets that 6th year, he's staying. Kejuan Lacey, he's staying. All these guys were all staying. It made it look like it was a loss for Kiffin because the transfer portal couldn't even get his own guys that he recruited.
Because everyone already chalked it up that Kiffin was going to go and get Chambliss. He was going to go and get Lacey. The video that surfaced on social media with, I believe, Knox's friend from school. Did you see the one with the phone call?
Yes.
Where he's like, Lacey's coming down. That didn't end up happening. And I just think that this is what he's using to try and make like a last-ditch effort to get these guys to enter the portal to eventually come to LSU. And I mean, he wants to one-up Ole Miss because, I don't want to say that him and Keith Carter have bad relations by any means. I
don't think it's good by any means.
It's not good, but it's definitely not terrible. But I think this situation is starting to make it pretty close to hostile environment. All I can say is, what is it? September 21st next year?
Yes. The Ole Miss game, the Ole Miss LSU game. Yeah, it's first week of SEC play.
It's January 16th. I'm just going to go on record and saying this. I will be there.
Oh, yeah.
I do not care.
Yeah.
I will do this show on that Friday, and the second we're done after high school football, I'm going to sleep, and I'm driving up to Oxford because this is going to be pure cinema.
It'll be must watch. It will be must watch, and I think that game will be either the primetime game or the 2:00 game, because I think it'll be primetime cinema no matter what those teams' records are heading into that game. And obviously, I think both teams will likely be undefeated going into that matchup. I think too, when you're talking with Lane, when you're talking about Lane, you're talking about this situation. Remember how a lot of this got started? Lane's friction overall with Ole Miss got started probably right before the Egg Bowl, and we heard that the school was giving Lane an ultimatum.
Yeah.
That the AD was giving Lane an ultimatum to, hey, you're with us or you're not with us. Lane wanted to kick the can down the road, ended up getting to the Egg Bowl, and then right after he signs with LSU, he tells all the assistant coaches, you're on this plane or you don't have a job. I think there's been a growing friction between these two, and if that's the case, to go along with your analogy about the Cold War, I think that this is the very first big measure thing that he's been able to do behind the scenes. Like, hey, let me really destroy this Ole Miss locker room by telling these guys, hey, you're making all this money. You're making this money at Ole Miss. You can make this other money somewhere else. And I think TJ Dottery is kind of maybe the perfect example of that, because he does, like you said, he does wear the green dot. He is, I would think, the captain of the defense and a guy that they're leaning on, moving forward in the next year.
Yeah, and Dottery had a really nice year for Ole Miss. 98 total tackles, I believe 48 solo, 2 pass deflections, 1.5 sacks, and then 2 forced fumbles. As we mentioned, wore the green dot, so he was the captain there on the defense. But when you look at it from an Ole Miss standpoint, you've got a lot of linebackers that are coming in. The biggest problem that we talked about with Ole Miss this postseason that became apparent is, well, number one, they couldn't get off the field on third down. That was apparent in the Miami game. I believe Miami converted 11 third downs, 11 or 12. You can't have that in a semifinal.
Right.
And that's why they held the ball for 41 minutes. But also, the open field tackling was not good by any stretch of the imagination. Right. It was bad against Georgia. It was bad against Tulane even. And then it really became apparent against Miami. So I think, I don't want to say Dottery was at the epicenter of that, but I do remember watching some of those games, and he was part of the missed tackles problem. So I don't know if this is – it's definitely a loss because now you have to find a new guy to wear the green dot and be that leader on the defense. Yeah. But at the same time, you got to understand that Pete Golding is going to transition this team from an offense-based team to a defensive-based team, kind of like what we've seen Georgia in the past.
Right. I figure it's going to look a lot like Georgia, and for those situations, you do want your main linebacker who wore the green dot to be the same guy that is the leader of the defense in the following year. So this one will be interesting to follow as it continues to go along. I also find it interesting that it came at the very end of the transfer portal window. So there's not a lot of time for these guys to make if they are going to enter. There's less than 48 hours, less than 24 hours to get your name in, to be able to find a spot. And so I wonder what this causes, and then moving into fall camp as we get closer to the season, what other quote unquote bombs are launched between these two programs, because it does feel like there's a lot of friction there.
Yeah, and unlike in the Cold War, there will actually be a confrontation. It's going to be in September next year. So it's not like it goes on without true confrontation. But I think we're starting to get close to DEFCON 1 here between these two teams.